Hands on the hood. Now you people always get loud when you're guilty. The command ripped through the quiet afternoon as a gun hovered inches from Calvin Brooks's back. Steady and impatient. Rough hands slammed him forward, grinding his chest into the hood. Metal biting through his coat like obedience had to be forced into his bones. Stop resisting. The voice snapped, twisting his arm higher and ratcheting the cuffs tighter. Even though Calvin didn't move, Calvin kept his eyes forward, breath counted, shoulders still. They didn't know the man they were pinning down was one call away from ending everything they stood for. Calvin Brooks checked his watch as he stepped onto his front porch, the morning sun warming his face. The folder he carried contained grant paperwork for the youth mentoring program, documents that needed signatures by noon. His brown overcoat sat perfectly pressed over his white dress shirt and blue tie, a professional appearance he'd maintained through 20 years of community work. The quiet suburban street stretched before him, lined with neat lawns and American flags. Calvin inhaled deeply, appreciating the crisp autumn air as he started down his walkway. A patrol car crept into view, moving slowly behind him. Calvin kept his pace steady, though his shoulders tensed slightly. The engine suddenly roared to life. Tires crunched against asphalt as the patrol car surged forward, shattering the morning quiet. Calvin's heart jumped, but he forced himself to keep walking. Car doors flew open with metallic screams. "Stop right there," a voice commanded. Calvin froze mid-stride, his fingers tightening around the folder's edge. Two officers emerged, Brent Clean and Ross Maddox, moving with practiced aggression. Both guns aimed straight at Calvin's chest. From her front window, Linda Sutter stood watching, her face bearing an almost eager expression as she peered through lace curtains. "Hands where we can see them," Clean shouted. Calvin slowly raised his palms, still holding the folder. "Officers, what's going on?" "I'm just heading to an appointment." "Shut up and drop the folder," Maddox barked. Behind her curtain, Linda Sutter's lips curved into a thin smile. Calvin carefully lowered the folder to the ground. "I'm complying." "Officers, please tell me what this is about." "Turn around." "No." "Stop." "Get on your knees." Clean, rapid-fired commands, each one contradicting the last. Calvin's mind raced to process the conflicting orders while keeping his body still. "I'm following your instructions," he said calmly. "Please, just tell me what's happening." Officer Maddox circled behind him. Calvin fought the instinct to turn his head, keeping his gaze forward. "Someone reported a suspicious person," Clean sneered. "You match the description." Calvin's stomach clenched. "I live here, officers. I'm just walking to an appointment. My ID is in my coat pocket if you'd like to see it." "Did I tell you to speak?" Clean's voice rose sharply. "Keep your mouth shut." Maddox grabbed Calvin's right arm, twisting it roughly behind him. The sudden movement threw Calvin off balance. "Officer, please, I'm not resisting." "Stop resisting," Clean roared, his voice echoing down the quiet street. Other curtains began to twitch along the street as neighbors peeked out. From her front porch across the street, Joan Pritchard emerged silently, phone already raised. Her arthritis-gnarled fingers were steady as she pressed record. Her doorbell camera blinked its silent red light, collecting evidence. Calvin remained still despite the pain shooting through his twisted arm, despite the gun still pointed at his chest. The grant papers scattered across the sidewalk, caught by the wind. 20 years of careful living, of following the rules, all blown away just as easily. But Calvin kept his voice level, his movements minimal, his dignity intact. From his painful position, Calvin watched Officer Clean's boots scrape against the pavement. Every breath felt dangerous. "I said, stop resisting." Clean's voice carried deliberately loud. His hand shot out, grabbing Calvin's wrist and twisting it upward at an unnatural angle. Pain exploded through Calvin's arm. "Officer, please." "I'm complying." "He's fighting," Clean announced. "He's resisting arrest." "Maddox, help me control him." Maddox moved with practiced efficiency, his hands locking onto Calvin's shoulders. "Stop moving," Maddox commanded, though Calvin hadn't shifted an inch. In one violent motion, Clean shoved Calvin forward while Maddox pushed from behind. Calvin's chest slammed against the patrol car's hood. More sirens wailed in the distance. Linda Sutter emerged from her house, phone clutched dramatically to her chest. "Officers," she called out. "I'm so glad you responded quickly. I was terrified when I saw him walking around our neighborhood." Calvin felt the concrete scrape his knees as Maddox kicked his legs apart. "This is completely unnecessary," Calvin managed to say. "I live here. I'm just trying to—" "Still running your mouth." Clean grabbed Calvin's arms, yanking them behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut several notches too tight. "Maybe a ride downtown will teach you some respect." More patrol cars arrived, lights flashing. "Officers," Linda said loudly. "I just want to thank you for protecting our neighborhood. When I saw him walking around, I knew something wasn't right." Calvin closed his eyes briefly, understanding washing over him. This wasn't about law enforcement. This was about putting him in his place, about making a spectacle of his dignity. Clean and Maddox hauled Calvin to his feet. "Watch your head," Clean said with mock politeness, then shoved Calvin down hard enough that his forehead bounced off the doorframe. The patrol car's interior smelled of stale sweat and despair. Through the window, Calvin watched his quiet suburban street transform into a circus of flashing lights. Linda Sutter stood in the center, one hand pressed to her heart while the other held her phone steady. The door slammed shut with heavy finality. From behind the scratched plexiglass window at booking, Officer Clean's pin scratched across paperwork. "Subject exhibited aggressive resistance," he muttered. "Refused verbal commands, physically combative." Officer Maddox added his own embellishments. "Demonstrated hostile behavior throughout the encounter. Required significant force to subdue." "I need to speak with a supervisor," Calvin said. "This report is false. I never resisted." "Shut up," Clean snapped. "You'll get your chance to talk when we're good and ready." "You mean when?" Joan produced her files. "I've already backed up everything. Multiple formats, multiple locations." Renee nodded approvingly. "DA Sloan is ambitious. He'll drag this out, wear you down, make you want to plead just to end it." She opened her laptop. "We need to get ahead of this. Joan's footage shows your compliance. We have timestamps proving the 911 call was suspicious. There's a pattern here. Tomorrow's arraignment is crucial," Renee explained. "They'll try to set harsh conditions, all designed to break your routine, your dignity. They're betting you'll crack under pressure." Calvin straightened his tie. "They bet wrong." The courthouse hallways cast harsh shadows as Calvin straightened his blue tie. Renee Alvarez stood beside him. "Remember, they want a reaction. Don't give them one." Joan Pritchard arrived, notebook and pen ready. DA Tripp Sloan strode past, his dismissive smirk saying everything. Inside the courtroom, Calvin took his place beside Renee. "Docket number 47329, State versus Calvin Brooks. Charge of resisting arrest." Sloan rose. "Your Honor, the defendant displayed aggressive behavior during a routine stop." "Objection," Renee cut in. "Counsel is editorializing without evidence." "The state requests strict release conditions," Sloan pressed. "Daily check-ins at the police station. Travel restricted to work and home." Renee stood. "Your Honor, my client has no prior record. He's a respected professional. These conditions are punitive and unnecessary." Judge Harrison peered over his glasses. "Release conditions set as follows. Check-ins 3 times per week. Travel restricted to work, home, and essential services. No contact with officers Clean or Maddox. Defendant must surrender his passport and maintain current employment." Calvin felt the cruel irony. They'd already forced his suspension. Outside, reporters clustered. Maya Whitfield stepped forward. "Mr. Brooks, did you resist?" Calvin met her gaze directly. "I survived." Linda Sutter stood near the elevator, her eyes meeting Calvin's briefly before skittering away. "Your next check-in is tomorrow at 8 a.m., the court clerk announced. "Any missed check-in will trigger a warrant." The community center's fluorescent lights buzzed as people filed in. Calvin sat between Renee and Joan. Chief Vance approached the podium. "Good evening, neighbors. We're here to discuss recent events." Linda Sutter sat prominently in the front row, tissues clutched in her hands. "Public safety requires trust," Vance continued. "When officers encounter resistance." Joan's pen moved steadily. "Mrs. Sutter, would you like to share your experience?" Linda stood. "I was so frightened when I saw him walking through our neighborhood looking at houses." "I was walking to my car," Calvin said quietly. Linda continued. "I did what we're always told. If you see something, say something." The officers were so professional, even when he became difficult. When the moderator opened the floor, Calvin stood. "Perhaps Mr. Brooks would prefer a private conversation," the moderator suggested. Silencing truth doesn't serve justice. Renee's voice cut through. Someone in the back shouted a racial slur. Calvin didn't flinch. He took out his phone and began recording. Name, badge number, and timestamp, he stated clearly. Point of order. Deacon Hell interrupted. The bylaws require speakers be recognized and identified. The shouters fell silent. Linda stood again. I just don't understand why he's making this so difficult. Renee's eyebrow arched. Is it department policy to draw weapons on unarmed citizens? To manufacture resistance charges without cause? I will not apologize for walking while black in my own neighborhood, Calvin said. I will not apologize for surviving an armed confrontation I didn't create. And I will not apologize for demanding accountability. He walked toward the exit, Joan, Renee, and Hal moving with him. The parking lot was dark. Calvin's car sat alone, and the spiderweb crack across his windshield was visible. His phone buzzed with a voicemail. We'll make you the example. Renee documented the threat, while Joan photographed the windshield. They're escalating, Renee observed. Because dignity scares them more than anger, Calvin said. They want me to choose between dignity and safety. I choose both. Morning sunlight streamed through Renee's office. Joan sat methodically walking them through her system. I've been a librarian for 40 years. The first thing you learn is that information isn't safe unless it's redundant. Every piece of evidence exists in 5 places. She opened her laptop. External drives, cloud storage, printed copies in 2 locations, and everything has timestamps. Renee leaned forward, studying the doorbell footage. The audio is what sells it. Calvin's calm voice. I'm complying, sir, followed by Clean's stop resisting. This is exactly what we need, Renee said. She called Lieutenant Pike. I'm about to file motions with compelling evidence. Maya Whitfield arrived before noon. Her segment aired that afternoon. The station ran it straight, just clear footage with timestamp verification. The impact was immediate. Phones started ringing. Older residents especially recognized the tactics, Maya reported. They're angry. Deacon Hal arrived. We're gathering tonight. I've got 20 senior church members who've documented similar incidents. They're ready to speak up. The community gathering was dignified and determined. They didn't march or chant. They simply stood together. This made the evening news alongside Maya's footage. Back in her office, Renee prepared to secure the evidence. She copied it to the secure drive, watching the progress bar move steadily. At 98%, everything froze. The screen flickered and went completely black. Joan checked their backup locations. The shared drive is showing access errors. Someone's been inside the system. Renee switched to her backup computer. Red flags popped up everywhere. Altered timestamps, missing files, corrupted data. They knew exactly what to hit. This wasn't random. Joan opened her email, revealing dozens of messages. Every time I updated our files, I sent encrypted copies through different channels. They can't erase what they can't find. A sharp knock at the door. Maya Whitfield stood there. You need to see this. The phone showed a police report claiming Calvin had violated his release conditions by threatening a witness. This is impossible, Calvin said. I haven't left my house except for approved meetings. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Multiple patrol cars pulled up. Officer Maddox stood back, watching. Remember, Renee said. Say nothing. The officers entered with practiced efficiency. They recited the violation claims. Calvin stood perfectly still as they cuffed him. Joan filmed everything. Maya's cameraman caught Calvin being led out. At the station, D.A. Sloan was waiting. Mr. Brooks seems unable to follow simple instructions. This pattern of unstable behavior proves our original concerns were justified. They placed Calvin in the same cell. Hours passed. Finally, alone, Calvin's composure cracked. His hands shook. Every system he'd trusted had been turned against him. But in that moment of breaking, something crystallized, a steel-hard resolve. They wanted him to disappear. Instead, he would become their nightmare. The first gray light of dawn seeped through when Renee appeared. We go federal today. Calvin nodded. Behind Renee, Joan stood with her notebook. Maya waited in the lobby. The jail's attorney meeting room felt different that morning. Renee set up her laptop. The video call window opened, revealing Special Agent Dana Cho. Walk me through the timeline. Renee shared her screen. At approximately 11:42 p.m. last night, our secure drive was compromised. The attack was precise, targeting only files related to tomorrow's hearing. The timestamps were altered. Lieutenant Pike joined the call. Internal Affairs has noted several irregularities. Access logs show similar timestamp anomalies. When I attempted to investigate, I encountered significant resistance. Resistance how? Dana Cho asked. Delayed responses. Missing documentation. Convenient system maintenance windows. Renee opened another folder with threatening messages. She played the voicemail. We'll make you the example. Dana Cho leaned forward. Who else has copies? Multiple secure locations, Renee answered. Joan Pritchard implemented a comprehensive backup system. Smart woman, Dana Cho commented. Mr. Brooks, have you been informed of your rights regarding federal witness protection? Yes, ma'am, but I'm not hiding. Dana Cho nodded. Then let's discuss immediate steps. Preservation orders for all relevant servers. Any deletion attempts after service will constitute federal obstruction. The meeting continued with exact timelines. By early afternoon, procedural pressure forced Calvin's release. He walked out into harsh sunlight. Joan waited with printed logs. Maya approached. Mr. Brooks, would you like to make a statement? Calvin straightened his tie. The truth doesn't vanish just because someone tries to delete it. The afternoon light slanted across the courthouse steps as Renee checked her phone. Agent Cho's team is mobilizing. Around them, the town felt different. Evening approached, and unmarked federal vehicles began appearing near the police department. They parked with quiet efficiency. Inside, phones started ringing. The pre-dawn darkness shrouded the police department as 3 unmarked vehicles pulled in. Special Agent Dana Cho stepped out first. 6 other agents followed. Lieutenant Pike waited by the entrance. Agent Cho, everything's ready. Dana held up warrants. Let's begin. Chief Vance burst from his office. This is completely unnecessary. Chief Vance, Dana handed him warrants. This authorizes immediate seizure of all body camera footage. The second covers dispatch recordings. The third encompasses server access records and all communications related to Calvin Brooks's arrest. Now, wait just a minute. Any interference constitutes obstruction. Your IT personnel will provide immediate access or will remove the servers entirely. Officer Clean arrived, freezing when he saw the activity. Dana approached. Officer Clean, your body camera footage shows several inconsistencies. Would you care to explain why you reported giving clear verbal warnings when the audio proves otherwise? Clean's swagger evaporated. The footage timestamps are encrypted and authenticated. They can't be altered without leaving digital traces. In a corner office, 2 agents were imaging Officer Maddox's phone. Text messages scrolled across screens. Look at this, one agent said. They were already discussing how to write it up. Dana examined the screen, making notes. Outside, DA Sloan held an impromptu press conference. This is nothing but political theater. Maya Whitfield cut in. Mr. Sloan, how do you respond to the evidence of timestamp manipulation? Those allegations are completely. I have the server logs right here. The access times, the deletion attempts. Numbers don't have politics, sir. Across town, Calvin sat at his kitchen table. Joan's car was parked across the street, her security cameras recording. Back at the station, Dana's team worked methodically. They found gaps in the body cam archives, conveniently timed deletions. Chief Vance, could you explain why these specific time periods are missing? System maintenance, regular cleanup, during an active investigation after preservation orders were issued? That's an interesting choice. The morning sun climbed as federal agents carried sealed evidence boxes to their vehicles. Inside, phones kept ringing. Officers whispered in corners. Maya stood outside reporting live. Federal agents are executing multiple warrants following evidence of tampering. This stems from the arrest of Calvin Brooks, who was charged with resisting despite video evidence showing full compliance. Near midday, Dana emerged carrying the final evidence box. Agent Cho, Maya called. What happens next? Dana placed the box carefully in her vehicle. The evidence suggests multiple instances of obstruction. That's now part of our investigation. She closed the door with a solid thunk. The morning sun streamed through tall courthouse windows. Every wooden bench creaked with spectators. Calvin sat beside Renee, his brown overcoat draped over his chair, blue tie perfectly straight. 3 thick binders sat before Renee. Joan perched in the front row. DA Sloan swept in with his usual commanding presence. All rise. Judge Margaret Howard entered. Case number 2023. CR 789, State versus Calvin Brooks. Hearing on defense motion to dismiss. Sloan rose. Your Honor, the state maintains these charges are properly filed. If I may, Your Honor. Renee's voice carried clear authority. We have evidence that directly contradicts not just the charge, but the integrity of the prosecution itself. Renee held up a USB drive in a sealed evidence bag. This contains Joan Pritchard's original doorbell camera footage showing Mr. Brooks's full compliance. The timestamps are authenticated. And this, she lifted another bag, contains the department's attempted deletions of their own body camera footage recovered by federal forensics. Chief Vance shifted uncomfortably. Renee opened the second binder. We have internal affairs documentation showing systematic attempts to alter evidence after preservation orders were issued. Federal Agent Dana Cho's preliminary findings. Note the timestamps of deletion attempts compared to when the White House liaison made initial contact. Judge Howard examined the documents, her expression darkening. Mr. Sloan, are you telling me your office was unaware of this evidence tampering? Your Honor, we maintain that any technical issues were purely technical issues. Renee opened the third binder. Page 47 shows text messages between officers Clean and Maddox discussing how to write up the resisting charge before they ever encountered Mr. Brooks. The gallery's whispers grew louder. Linda Sutter began inching toward the door. And here, Renee lifted another document. Is proof that dispatch recordings were selectively deleted after federal preservation orders. Judge Howard's patience evaporated. Mr. Sloan, does the state wish to explain these discrepancies? Sloan stood, but his commanding presence seemed hollow. Your Honor, while there may be some procedural irregularities, Ms. Alvarez has presented evidence of systematic tampering, false reporting, and obstruction. This isn't irregular, Mr. Sloan. This is misconduct. Given the demonstrated pattern, Renee stood again. We move for dismissal with prejudice. Judge Howard studied the documents. This court has seen many disturbing things, but the systematic attempt to destroy an innocent man's life through false charges reaches a new level. The motion to dismiss is granted with prejudice. Furthermore, I am ordering a full inquiry into misconduct. Mr. Brooks, this court owes you an apology. This case is dismissed. The gavel banged. Calvin stood slowly. Joan beamed from the gallery. Maya was already typing on her phone. They walked out together, past Sloan's rigid back, past Chief Vance's crumbling authority. The courthouse steps gleamed in late morning sun. Calvin took his first deep breath as a truly free man. Now comes the consequences part, Renee said. The afternoon sun beat down on City Hall steps. Lieutenant Pike approached the microphones, Special Agent Dana Cho standing behind her. Good afternoon. Following a thorough investigation, we have identified multiple serious policy violations. Officers Brent Clean and Ross Maddox have been terminated effective immediately. We are initiating decertification proceedings. This is termination for cause. Calvin stood to the side with Renee, watching his attackers' careers crumble. Dana Cho stepped forward. The FBI's Civil Rights Division has opened a formal investigation into both the initial incident and subsequent obstruction through evidence tampering. From the crowd, someone called out, "What about Chief Vance?" As if on cue, Chief Vance emerged. After careful consideration, I believe it's in the department's best interest that I step down, effective immediately. The crowd reacted immediately, whispers, scattered applause. Chief, are you resigning because of the federal investigation? Maya called. I'm choosing to put the department first. Are you anticipating criminal charges? Dana Cho spoke again. The investigation will follow the evidence wherever it leads, regardless of rank. Pike held up another document. The State Bar Association has received a formal ethics complaint regarding the handling of this case, detailing prosecutorial misconduct. Renee stepped forward. Mr. Brooks's rights were violated systematically and deliberately. We will ensure full accountability. Calvin stood beside her, his dignity intact, his brown overcoat and blue tie a reminder of the ordinary day power had tried to destroy. Calvin's phone buzzed. He stepped aside to answer. Mr. Brooks, we've reviewed the situation, his supervisor said. We'd like you to return to work immediately. Your position is secure and will process back pay. Job's back, he told the group. With back pay. Renee nodded. One more piece of justice. Calvin straightened his tie. the simple gesture carrying the weight of restored dignity. The system had tried to break him with guns, badges, and false charges. Instead, truth had broken the system's presumption of immunity. Morning sunlight painted long shadows across the suburban street where Calvin's ordeal had begun. He walked the same path, wearing the same brown overcoat and blue tie, but everything had changed. Joan Pritchard walked beside him, carrying a folder of documents. Deacon Hell walked behind them. They approached the community room where Renee waited. Maya arrived with her camera operator. More people filtered in than expected. Older residents who'd stayed quiet, young parents worried about their children. Calvin stood at the front. "Thank you all for coming. We're here to announce something concrete." Renee stepped forward. "We're establishing the Community Legal Aid Fund. It's already received initial funding. This isn't just about having lawyers. It's about evidence preservation protocols, civilian oversight training, and rapid response support." Joan added, "We've developed a documentation system that any resident can use." Through the window, Linda Sutter stood across the street, watching. Calvin explained the practical impact. "The dismissal with prejudice means they can't try these charges again. The officer's firing and decertification means they can't move to another department. The chief's resignation and the DA's ethics complaint show enablers face consequences too. But that's just punishment. We're here to build protection." "I wasn't resisting," Calvin stated firmly. "I was surviving. Now we're building protection so the next person doesn't stand alone." The meeting continued with practical details, funding structures, reporting protocols, training schedules. As it wound down, people lingered to share their own stories, reinforcing why they needed systematic change. Outside, the afternoon sun was setting as Calvin headed home. Neighbors who'd hidden now stepped onto porches to wave. Inside his house, Calvin moved through his evening routine with deliberate calm. He hung his overcoat carefully, smoothing the brown fabric. His fingers worked the knot of his blue tie. Standing before his mirror, Calvin slipped the tie from his collar and hung it neatly. A simple action that carried the weight of victory earned, not granted. Each crease and fold represented a choice to stand firm, to document truth, to build protection rather than seek revenge.